On Christmas. Oh my God.
Right.
Right?
She's surprised it's on Christmas.
Yep.
It's like you. You were early today. It's either early or late.
That's it. What is it with Jewish holidays?
Right.
And nobody knows when the Jewish holidays are. Oh, they're early this year, they're late this year. And
Never
nobody knows.
Never on time, whatever that might
There's
be.
no time. Exactly. Exactly. Okay, Zalman, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. Good, thank God. Doing well. Bela Esther, how about yourself?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Good.
Good. And Joan, how's your back feeling?
Better. It's coming along. It's still ridiculous. I walk with a walker like I'm 105. I mean, I'm all bent over and very slow. But that's better than the beginning.
Yes. Yeah, it's better than being stuck in bed.
Right. Or in my chair. I couldn't even get in and out of bed for months. I bought a hospital last week. Yeah. So it's coming along. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so today we have some very interesting discussions that are kind of tangential. I made a blessing before. Let's say l'chaim, everyone. So we're going to continue the discussion about tefillin and where is the appropriate place to keep tefillin. And through that, we're going to go off on a tangent about what is considered appropriate to pray in terms of having other people around you. So we spoke about if there's a bad smell or if there's urine or feces around, you're not allowed to pray. But if there are unclothed people around you, you're also not allowed to pray. So the question is when and to what degree, and we're going to start the discussion a little bit today. And let us jump right in. Okay. Okay, do you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what we finished off with last class is that Rav Huna, I think it was, I don't remember who it was, maybe here, Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda said that you can put things in the same pouch as your tefillin if either you have not yet put tefillin in there. So let's say it's a tefillin bag, but you haven't yet put tefillin inside, so then you can put money or whatever else you want. Or if you originally, when you bought the bag, you had in mind that you're going to be able to put other things in there as well. Let me ask you, what about a yarmulke? You think a yarmulke you're allowed to put in a tefillin bag which is designated for tefillin?
No, it's only tefillin.
I would think you could.
But you would think that that's a prayer item.
Yeah, I think you could.
So I would agree that a yarmulke, a prayer book, things like that would be allowed to put into the bag because they are articles of prayer.
Right.
Okay, so now we have another opinion. According to Abaye said that designation is significant. In other words, if a person decides that this tefillin bag is going to be for tefillin, even though they haven't put tefillin in there yet. What's another example of when designation would make a difference? If a person is building a house and you have the external structure up, right? You have your beams are up already. And we have the architectural plans, but so far there's just a shell of a house. Are you allowed to pray in the area that will become a bathroom?
No.
So according to Rav Chisda, there's no toilet here, you can pray. But according to Abaye said the designation is significant, and this will become a bathroom. Already from now, it's not appropriate to pray there. So Abaye holds that all relevant halachos apply to an object designated for a specific purpose, whether or not it has already been used for that purpose. So according to Abaye, he says like this: if he designated the cloth as to use as a pouch for the tefillin, even if he did not yet bundle tefillin inside it, he is prohibited from bundling money in it. However, if he did bundle phylacteries in it, so then if the tefillin are already in it, if he designated the cloth for that particular use, meaning for only tefillin, it is prohibited to bundle money in it. But if he had in mind that it's not going to be only for tefillin, then it is not prohibited to put money inside that bag. So now that we're talking about bags and placement of tefillin, Rav Yosef, the son of Rav Nechunya, asked his teacher, Rav Yehuda, an interesting question. He says, what happens if you're going to sleep? In those days, they weren't lucky like we are. We, thank God, do not have mice or rats or rodents running around. In the olden days, they did. Have you ever seen a dog with a shoe, a leather shoe?
No.
No.
I see dogs with shoes or things on their feet to protect their feet. I don't know if
Oh,
they were
sorry. No, I'm
leather.
saying like dogs chewing on shoes. I don't know if it's a real thing or if it's just in all the books.
Oh yeah,
But
dogs.
apparently,
Yes. I've seen dogs, my dog chewing on shoes.
right. So you would not want your dog or your neighbor's dog or your neighbor's rat to come and chew up your tefillin while you're sleeping. In fact, and I think we may have learned this already, the sages decreed a certain level of impurity on all holy books. Because what would happen is people would keep their holy books together with their consecrated foods. And then when the mice would come to eat from the food, they would chew on the parchment as well, and the books would get ruined. So the sages declared that all the books, all the holy books, should be considered a certain level of impurity. That way people would not put them next to food. So when it comes to tefillin, so you don't want to leave your tefillin around because you don't want the night mice to come and mess with them. So here comes the question, what is the halacha? Should we continue translating the word halacha into Jewish law, or should we keep it as halacha and we've seen it enough by now?
Halacha is Jewish law, right?
Halacha is Jewish law. Let's see. We'll try to continue saying both. But if you ever see the word halacha, and I don't translate it, then you'll know what it is. It's the Jewish law. And if I ever say a phrase or a word or something that you are not sure of, please stop me and ask. Question is like this. May a man put his tefillin in his bed underneath his head while he's sleeping? So he explained this question. He said, with regard to whether or not one may place them under his feet, I have no question, because that would be treating them in a deprecating manner, and it's certainly prohibited. That would be extremely inappropriate to put your tefillin underneath your feet. My dilemma is whether one may or may not place them under his head. Are you allowed to sleep on top of your tefillin? What is the halacha in that case? So Rav Yehuda answered him. Sorry?
Only if you can learn by osmosis.
Yes. Rav Yehuda said to him, Shmuel said as follows. Shmuel made a statement that one is allowed to have tefillin underneath his head. It is permitted even if his wife is with him in his bed. So that last line, even if his wife is with him in his bed, is what's going to get us into a much longer discussion. But let's first look at this of itself. Shmuel said you are allowed to have tefillin underneath your head. Now, Shmuel actually was from the last generation of the Tanaim, which are the sages who are quoted in the Mishnah, and the first generation of the Amoraim, which is the sages who are mentioned in the Talmud, in the Gemara. So he was, how would you say? I don't know what's a good example for this, but basically he was a kind of generational gap when they closed off and they said, no more, we're done with the Mishnah. And the authority that those sages had is over, and now we're on to a lesser authority. Rav, Shmuel, and Levi were three students who were old enough that they were contemporaries with the authors of the Mishnah, but they were too young to actually be included. Therefore, they are mentioned all over the Talmud, all over the Gemara. They were great teachers and great rabbis, but they were not considered Anaim. They were considered already of the next generation. So they just missed the cutoff. Let's talk about it in school, right? They were born on the last day of August, right? They missed the September 1st cutoff. But they were right there. So Shmuel said that it is permitted for a person to sleep with his tefillin under his head. There's a problem with that statement, though. The Gemara raises an objection based on what was taught in a brisa. We have a brisa which is more authoritative than an Amora, who is a sage from the Talmudic era. And the brisa says a man may not place his phylacteries under his feet, as in doing so he treats them in a deprecating manner, but he may place them under his head. And if his wife was with him, it is prohibited even to place it under his head. Because it's not appropriate for the tefillin to be in bed while a man and woman are being together. It's not proper for the tefillin to be there. Not respectful for them. However, the brisa continues, if there was a place where he could place the tefillin, either 3 handbreadths above, like if there was a little shelf above the bed that he could put them on, or 3 handbreadths below his head. In other words, if there was something sticking out of the bed. Is everyone still able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you just lost the video.
Yeah, I lost the video, but so long as we can still hear. Or 3 handbreadths below. It is permissible, even if his wife is with him in bed, as that space is sufficient for the tefillin to be considered that they're in a separate place. So we see over here a brisa that says clearly that if a man's wife is with him in bed, he's not allowed to have the tefillin with him in the bed. Cannot have them under his pillow. So this seems to be a conclusive refutation of the statement of Shmuel. And the Gemara concludes, indeed, it is a conclusive refutation. So now we have a problem. Shmuel said something. He said that if a person's wife is with him in bed, he's allowed to have the tefillin underneath his pillow. We have a brisa that says that if his wife is with him in the bed, he cannot have the tefillin underneath his pillow. But we have some other information. The other information is that we know that the halacha, the final ruling, the Jewish law, is that a person is allowed to have his tefillin under his head, even if his wife is with him in the bed. So Rava says, although a brisa was taught that constitutes a conclusive refutation of what Shmuel said, the halacha is in accordance with his opinion in this matter. What is the reason for this? Why are we saying that the halacha is according to Shmuel if we have a brisa that said differently? And I want to take a moment to pause and all congratulate ourselves. We have finished page 23b. We are making strides. The Gemara answers because, the top of 24a, whatever offers more protection is preferable even at the cost of deprecation. In other words, even if it's going to be considered slightly sorry.
Long trip.
1 second. What's going on over here? I hope I won't lose this here. But you can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Even if it would be, oh, there we go. Okay. So am I joined twice now? Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now can you see me?
No.
How about now? Now can you see me?
No. Now we
Okay.
can. Now we see you, Rabbi.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Wait, what? I don't know what's going on here. Anyway. Okay, well, so long as we're back, I'm going to share the screen again. Okay. You able to see the shared screen?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So, what is this? Okay. So, the Gemara responds, the reason why the halacha is in accordance with Shmuel, even though there is a brisa that says differently, is that protection is more important than deprecation. In other words, even though it might be a little bit embarrassing for the tefillin to be in his bed while he's with his wife, still, because that will offer more protection for the tefillin, that is considered more important and the better way to place them. That way he doesn't have to worry that the tefillin will get ruined. So, now that we know that he is allowed to put his tefillin underneath his pillow, where underneath his head does he place them? So Rabbi Yirmiyah said he places them between the pillow and the mattress, but not directly aligned with his head, a little bit to the side. Not directly underneath his head, but underneath his pillow. The Gemara asks, didn't Rabbi Chia teach a brisa that in that case he places them in a pouch used for tefillin directly under his head? So the Gemara replies, yeah, it is directly under his head, but the bulge in the pouch where the tefillin are should be protruding out. So you could have the actual pouch directly under your bed, but the tefillin part of it not directly beneath his head. On this note, the Gemara relates that Bar Kapara, who was one of the sages, would tie them in his bed curtain and project their bulge outward. So that way the pouch was tied in his bed curtain, but the bulge where the actual boxes are would be facing outward away from his bed. Rav Shesha, the son of Rav Idi, would place them on a bench and spread a cloth over the tefillin. And here we have a story. Whenever we have a story, we know that this is conclusive. Rav Amanuna, the son of Rav Yosef, said, I was once standing before Rava, and Rava told me, go and bring me my tefillin. So I went to find his tefillin, and I found them in his bed, between the mattress and the pillow, not aligned with his head. So where are you supposed to put the tefillin if you're having them in your bed? So now we know. It's supposed to be between the mattress and the pillow, but not directly underneath his head. And he happened to know that the night before was the day of his wife's immersion in the ritual bath for purification. She went to mikveh the night before. So certainly, Rava had engaged in marital relations in order to fulfill the mitzvah. On the night that a woman goes to mikveh after her period, it is a mitzvah for the husband and wife to be together. So he knew that for sure his teacher and his teacher's wife must have been together the night before. And he sees that the tefillin were in the bed. And he now figured out why his teacher told him to go and get the tefillin instead of his teacher going to get the tefillin himself. He did so. He sent me to bring him his tefillin in order to teach all of us the practical halacha in this case, which is that even if a husband and wife are together in bed, if the best way to protect the tefillin is to have them underneath your pillow, you have them underneath your pillow. Today, thank God, we have houses. You don't have to worry about mice and other things ruining our tefillin. Okay, so now comes a question about prayer. In the olden days, we have to understand that what's the word I'm looking for? Not the context, the culture. The culture was very different in those days. For example, it was normal in those days to have slaves. Today, it's not normal to have a slave. In those days, it was normal to take a bath once a week or once a month. Today, it's not normal. So the culture was very different culture. They ate different foods. They acted differently. So, with that in mind, Rav Yosef, the son of Rabbi Nechunya, who raised the dilemma above, he was the one who asked the question about putting the tefillin in your bed. He had another question that he asked his teacher, Rav Yehuda. And he asked him like this: if there are two individuals that are sleeping in a single bed, given that in those days it was standard practice to sleep without clothing, they didn't have pajamas, they didn't want to get their clothes wet, so what is the halacha? Is it permissible for this one to turn his head aside and recite Shema, and for that one to turn their head aside and recite the Shema? Are they allowed to pray or recite the Shema in their bed, or is it prohibited because they are unclothed? And because they are unclothed, it is unfit to recite the Shema even though they have a blanket. So he answered, he said to him, Shmuel said as follows: this is permitted even if his wife is with him in bed. Even if his own wife is with him in bed, and we're going to see soon why that would be a problem. Sorry, not why it would be a problem. If a man is in bed with his wife, and even if they're not facing each other, but if they're facing each other for sure, it would not be appropriate to say the Shema because he will be having other thoughts. But what happens if he faces away and she faces away? Can she say the Shema and can he say the Shema? So Shmuel said that would be permitted. So for sure, if two men are sleeping in a bed, provided that they're not homosexual, then that would be a lesser degree of reason to worry, and they would for sure be allowed to recite the Shema. Rabbi Yosef strongly objects to this response. You say that he is permitted to recite Shema in bed with his wife, and needless to say, he is permitted to do so and in bed with another. On the contrary, since his wife is like his own flesh, and he will not have lustful thoughts of her, it is permitted. But if there's someone else that he's not used to touching, so then that would not be considered like his own flesh, so it would be prohibited, even if they're facing away from each other, but they may touch each other, and that would be skin that he's not used to, and should be prohibited. He shouldn't be allowed to recite the Shema. The Gemara raises an objection to this from the resolution of an apparent contradiction between two other brises. It was taught in one brisa that if you have two unclothed individuals who are sleeping in a single bed, this one turns their head aside and says Shema, and that one turns their head to the other side and says Shema. So that's one brisa. If there are two people in one bed, turn away from each other and say Shema. It's not a problem.
So they can say it at the
another brisa. Sorry?
They can say it at the same time?
They can say it at the same time, yeah.
Okay.
So long as they're facing away from each other so that they don't see each other's nakedness.
Right.
And it was taught in another brisa. One who is sleeping in his bed, and his unclothed children and members of his household are beside him, may not recite the Shema unless a garment separates between them. So we see here clearly, before we finish the brisa, we'll finish the brisa in a minute, but the first brisa says if you have two people who are in the same bed, they can just turn away from each other and recite Shema. And the second one says that if it's someone sleeping in his bed and his unclothed children or members of his household are next to him, he has to make sure that the blanket is separating between them. So there's a contradiction there. Now, the second brisa finishes off, if his children or the members of his household were minors, so it is permitted to recite Shema even without a garment separating between them. Okay.
Now, pajama.
So according to...
So, Rabbi,
sorry.
so
Yeah.
this is, so if pajamas pretty much are acceptable, I mean, if the other two people are in the pajamas or night clothes or night shirt, then all of this is moot, right?
Correct. This would, if they're closed, then these questions are not questions. Yeah. Correct. Okay, so according to Rabbi Yosef, the apparent contradiction between these two brises is not really a contradiction, because the second brisa is talking about where his wife is in the bed with him.
Whoops, did we lose it?
Sorry, 1 second. Rabbi Yosef said that if his wife is okay, sorry. Rabbi Yosef said that if it's his wife, he is allowed to say the Shema because he's used to her, and therefore that's the first brisa, that he turns his head away one way and his wife turns her head the other way, and they both say the Shema. And the second brisa is talking about other people, his children and members of his household, but not his wife, and therefore he cannot say the Shema unless they either in pajamas or have a blanket between them. However, according to Shmuel said that a person is allowed to say the Shema with his wife in bed and for sure someone else, who permits one to recite Shema regardless of who is in bed with him. It is indeed difficult. How would he interpret the brisa that says that there needs to be a garment separating between the person and his children or the members of his household? So the Gemara replies that Shmuel can say to you that according to Rabbi Yosef, it doesn't work out either. Shmuel can say to you that according to Rabbi Yosef's opinion, does it work out well? In that same brisa, it says that one who is sleeping in bed and his children and members of his household are beside him, he may not recite the Shema unless a garment separates between them. Now, Shmuel says that when we talk about the members of his household, that must be referring to his wife. Who else would it be? And it says that he may not recite Shema unless the garment separates between them. Doesn't Rav Yosef hold that his wife is like his own flesh and no separation is necessary? Rather, you have to say that these two brises are going according to two different opinions.
Brad, I got a question.
Yeah.
Aren't you supposed to say the Shema with the right hand covering your eyes?
You are.
So
Right.
doesn't that help in terms of not seeing the other person?
That is a very good question. That is a very good question. And I believe that the answer, there's two parts to the answer. One is that if the people are facing each other, then they may touch each other. Or even if they're facing away from each other, they may touch each other. And if they're touching, then covering your eyes doesn't help from feeling.
Yeah.
And also, we only cover our eyes for the first sentence of the Shema, but the rest of the paragraph, we don't have to cover our eyes.
Yeah, okay.
It's a good question. So Rabbi Yosef is going to have to hold that each of these two brises was written or authored by a different Tana, and the two of them argue. So I too hold that there is a Tanaitic dispute, and I accept the ruling of one of the brises. So Rabbi Yosef is going to hold of the first brise. According to Rabbi Yosef, if it's his wife, then it's permitted, but anyone else is prohibited. And according to Shmuel, no matter who it is permitted. The Gemara is now going to look at one of the parts of the brisa and clarify it as well. The master said in the brisa, right? We're quoting a part of the brisa that we just quoted, that we just said and learned. This one turns his head and recites Shema. The Gemara notes a difficulty. If they're turning away from each other, but their bare behinds can touch still, aren't there bare buttocks? This supports the opinion of Rav Huna. As Rav Huna said, buttocks do not constitute nakedness. When we talk about nakedness, that does not include the behind. So the Gemara tries to bring a proof from the following Mishnah that would support Rav Huna's opinion. If there is a woman, so a general introduction is that as someone who is naked is not allowed to make a blessing. Therefore, someone who is naked is not allowed to do any mitzvah that requires a blessing. For example, someone who is naked may not shake the lulav and esrog because they have to make a blessing. You can't make a blessing while you're naked. Separating challah is a mitzvah that's a special mitzvah specifically. Men would also have to do the mitzvah, but similar to Shabbos candles, that it's entrusted to the women. That when you're making, a certain amount of dough, there is a portion of the dough that has to be separated, and that is called challah. Not like the regular challah that you buy in the store, but the portion of dough that has to be taken and given to the kohen, or today we burn it. And the woman makes a special blessing while she does this challah separation. So a woman could sit and separate her challah naked, despite the fact that she must recite a blessing over the separation of the challah, because she can cover her face, which is a euphemism for her genitals, in the ground. So when a woman is sitting down, her front could be covered in the ground. But a male, whose genitals are not covered when he sits, may not do so, has to actually go and put on clothes before he kneads his dough and separates the part for the kohen. So this Mishnah would seem to teach that exposed buttocks do not constitute nakedness, because the backside would still not be covered by the ground when someone's sitting on the ground.
Sitting on the
Yes.
ground. I mean, is that literal, sitting on the ground, or is that a euphemism for
Sitting on the
something
ground, no,
else?
literally sitting on the ground. So her face would be a euphemism for down there, would be covered. I'm not sure exactly all the anatomy, but apparently a woman would be able to sit and her front would be covered by the ground, but not her back. But Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak interprets the Mishnah referring to a case where, I guess it must have been a softer dirt, and her entire private parts were covered completely in the ground.
Because what
So
I'm
the front
thinking
and
is
the back
maybe,
are both-
Rabbi, maybe
Yeah.
ground is a euphemism for a woman's genitals cannot be seen through, well, pubic hair.
No, we're talking about sitting on the floor. In those days, they didn't have chairs really, so they did a lot of their work sitting on the floor, kneading dough.
Well, the dough was on a table, though. Must have been a low table, like the Japanese
Or
type thing.
they used to have these kneading troughs that they used to use.
Yes.
But Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, anyways, he says, no, we're talking about a softer earth where the woman could be completely covered, and so there's no proof for Rav Huna's opinion.
It could be grass or something.
Oh, yeah, it could be grass. Okay, so now another question.
Yeah.
The master said in the Brisa, we're going to quote another part of the original Brisa that says, if his children and the members of his household were minors, even though they are unclothed, it is permitted to recite the Shema, even if there's no garment separating between the parent and the child. So the Gemara asks, minors, what are we considered minors over here? So usually in secular law, we would consider someone a minor until 18. That does not sound like the correct application over here. In Judaism, a minor is someone who's under bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah. But the question is that what we're talking about here as well? So we have two opinions. Until what age is one still considered a minor? So Rav Chisda said, a girl until she is 3 years and 1 day old. So when a girl is 3 years old, she's already not considered a minor for this anymore. And a boy until he is 9 years old. For these are the ages from which a sexual act in which they participate is considered a sexual act. We're going to learn a lot more about that as we get into the context of marriage. You still able to hear me?
Yes.
Good. And we're back faster this time. Okay, let's go back to share screen. Okay. So that's the first opinion. The second opinion, some say that a girl 11 years old, meaning within the year of her bas mitzvah, and a boy of 12 years old within the year of his bar mitzvah, because that is the age that they are considered adults in this regard. This age is only approximate, as the age of majority for both this and that, the boy and the girl, is as soon as they reach puberty, basically. At the onset of puberty, in accordance with the verse, your breasts were formed and your hair was grown. In other words, when a boy or girl starts hitting puberty, they would be considered an adult in this regard. So now that we've come to this conclusion, Rav Kahana said to Rav Ashi in the previous section that we were learning about, when we were talking about putting tefillin underneath your pillow, Rava said that despite a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Shmuel, even though we had a brisa that refuted Shmuel, the halacha still went according to his opinion. Here, what is the ruling? In other words, maybe now we can say that even though we have a clear brisa that says one thing, maybe we can go according to something else. So Rav Ashi answered him, were all of them woven in the same tapestry, in the same act of weaving? Are there no distinctions between different cases? Rather, if you have a specific case where it is stated that even though we have a proof, even though we have a brisa, the halacha could be different, so that is the exception to the rule. That is not the rule. Where it is stated, it is stated. Where it is not stated, it is not stated. And you can't start comparing every case to each other. So now Rav Mari asks a wonderful question to Rav Papa. He almost got kicked out of the yeshiva for this question. He asked, what happens if someone has a pubic hair that's sticking out of their clothes? Is that considered nakedness? You're not allowed to say Shema. Does it constitute nakedness if one's pubic hair is protruding through their garment? Rav Papa said about him, a hair, a hair. You're splitting hairs and being pedantic over trivialities. So there was another one. Rav Zera actually did get kicked out of the yeshiva for asking questions. One of the things was, if there's a bird, so they used to have these tall nests people used to have, what's it called, a dovecote. Is that what it's called? Where people have, they nest their doves in the dovecote?
I think so.
C-O-T-E.
Say that again?
C-O-T-E. C-O-T-E, a dovecote.
Dove? I've never heard of a dovecote.
I've seen it.
Maybe it's an Australian thing.
So I think so people used to have their birds in these tall buildings. It's like almost like a bird feeder, and they used to have ladders to go up, and they used to breed their birds over there, and then they would take them and eat them for supper when they needed them, or whatever it was that they used them for.
Oh,
So if you find a baby dove within 75 feet of this bird feeder, then it belongs to the owner of the bird feeder. But if it's outside 75 feet of the bird feeder, then it's considered ownerless and you can take it. So this Rab Zera picked up his hand and said, what happens if 1 foot is within the 75 feet and 1 foot is outside of the 75 feet? And they kicked him out of school. He kicked him out of the yeshiva.
Well, it seems like that question doesn't seem any more pedantic than any other question.
I guess it was not the only question of such sorts that he asked. I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But he was let in after, of course, and he became one of the great sages of the Talmud, Rab Zera. Okay. So now we know that you're not allowed, so that was talking about in bed, when you're not seeing the person because they're covered by a blanket. But if, one second, L'chaim, if there is someone who is unclothed standing in front of you, so then you would not be allowed to say the Shema. So the question is, how much nakedness is considered naked? If a person is completely unclothed, well, that would be considered naked. But what happens if there's a woman in a bikini or a man in little shorts? So an exposed handbreadth in a woman, a handbreadth is about 4 inches. If there's 4 inches of exposed skin in a woman, that is considered nakedness. The Gemara asks, regarding what halacha was this said? If you're talking about the prohibition against looking at an exposed handbreadth in a woman, you're not allowed to, it's lewd and lustful to be staring at a woman's exposed flesh. Didn't Rav Shesha say, why did the verse enumerate anklets and bracelets, rings, earrings, and girdles? Because we're talking about some jewelry that is worn externally over her clothing, like bracelets, together with jewelry that was worn internally underneath their clothing, like the girdles. This is to tell you that anyone who gazes upon a woman's little finger is considered as if he gazed upon her naked genitals. For if his intentions are impure, it makes no difference where he looks or how much is exposed, even if it's less than a handbreadth. So when we say that 4 inches of exposed skin in a woman is considered nakedness, that can't be talking about the prohibition against staring at a naked woman, because that would be even if it's less than 4 inches. Any amount of skin that you're looking at on a woman with impure thoughts, that would be considered nakedness even if it's less than 4 inches. Rather, it is referring even to his wife, and we're talking about reciting Shema. One may not recite the Shema if his wife is exposed even a handbreadth. So now that we're talking about things that are considered exposed, along these lines, Rav Chisda said, even a woman's exposed leg is considered nakedness. As it is stated, uncover the leg and pass through the rivers, and it is written in the following verse, your nakedness shall be revealed and your shame shall be seen. Shmuel further stated, a woman's singing voice is considered nakedness, which he derives from the praise accorded to the woman's voice. As it is stated, sweet is your voice and your countenance is alluring, which is the source for many people who do not listen to women singing, besides their wives and their daughters, their sisters. Similarly, Rav Sheshes stated, even a woman's hair is considered nakedness, for it too is praised. As it is written in Song of Songs, your hair is like a flock of goats trailing down from Mount Gilad, which is one of the reasons why women, once they're married, cover their hair. So now we're going back to Tefillin, sorry?
What did you say? It was like a trail of goats going down the mountain?
Like a trail of goats.
Goats, yeah.
A flock of goats trailing down from Mount Gilad. Apparently it's a beautiful scene to watch a flock of goats trailing down the mountain.
Okay. Thank you.
So now we're going to go, so it's 11:15. Wow, time flies. Okay, so next week we're going to continue our discussion with proper placement and respect for the tefillin. So let me stop the share over here. Reminder, everyone, please mark your calendars. Next week, Friday night, December 27, we're going to be having here at the Chabad House a beautiful Hanukkah Friday night meal. And tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we're going to be talking about the menorah. Is a menorah a mitzvah for you, or is a menorah a mitzvah for others? Or maybe both. Is it a personal thing or a communal thing, private or public? Please join us tomorrow, 11 a.m., here in the Chabad House, 3800 Inverary Boulevard. It's great to be back. Thank you all for your patience with us. Wishing you a wonderful day, a happy day, a healthy day, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Bye,
Thank you.
Rabbi. I didn't know
See you
you
tomorrow.
were
Bye, everyone.